at that point, I just needed someone to be there and say it was okay and not judge me and not yell back at me.
Welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast, the show that gives hope and insight from real voices on the foster and adoption journey. Pull up a chair. We're glad you could join us. Here are your hosts, Mike and Kristen Berry.
Friends, welcome back to the Honestly Adoption Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for this show. You guys, simply put, it is a pleasure to be able to connect with you guys every single week. And if you're brand new to the show, let me tell you about myself. I'm Mike Berry. Along with Kristen Berry, we're the hosts for this show. And you can learn more about us by visiting honestlyadoption.com and more about this show by visiting honestlyadoption.com/podcast. You are joining us for Season 22, Episode 179, and we are excited to welcome a very special guest. In fact, she's the youngest guest on our show, with the exception being our children, of course, because we've interviewed them over the years. But Aiden Lincoln is an 18-year-old adoptee and just an extraordinary young woman. We absolutely loved this interview with her. You're going to learn more about Aiden here in just a few moments, and you're going to be moved by her story, her warm and gentle spirit. And you guys, listen, she is already changing the world. But listen, if you, again, are brand new, make sure you catch up on past episodes over at that website I just gave you, honestlyadoption.com/podcast. And you can also subscribe to the show. And listen, we would love to hear what you think about this show. Over on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a review, leave us a comment. You can also find us on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Guys, we're all over the place. This is a lot of fun. We're glad you guys are here. And now, on with the show. Hey, Aiden, welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Aiden, we're excited to connect with you. And we really think that our listeners are going to just really be interested in your story and all that you are already accomplishing and doing in your own life, the way that you're telling your own story from your perspective. And I think our listeners are just going to be really excited about this interview. So I'm so glad you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Aiden Lincoln. I'm a Chinese American adoptee who was abandoned at birth, found at a train station in China, and spent the first 10 months of my life in an orphanage. I'm so thankful that my parents here decided to adopt a girl, and they flew halfway around the world to get me. I have two older brothers, Alex and McLean, and today I seek on sharing my story with the world in hopes of inspiring others.
Aiden, it has been so exciting to read a lot of what you've already written about yourself, and to watch some of the interviews that you've given. And you are the youngest podcast guest we've ever had. Well, that's not true. Our own children have been on our podcast, but we talk to them all the time. So we knew what they were going to say. Yeah. But it was really, really very interesting to read a lot of what you've written about your experience as an adoptee. And one of the things that really struck me was your knowledge of how trauma has changed your brain and your perspective. What led you to learn more about how that trauma was affecting you?
I think just my struggles that I've gone through for the past 18 years. The early years in my life were extremely difficult. I would lash out at everybody. Everybody would lash back at me, and that just wasn't helping me. It was making my anxiety and my ADHD so much worse on so many different levels. And I'm so thankful that my mom, who's an educator, knew and understood me from the beginning, while my dad worked his very best to help me. And despite I've had so many teachers, especially in the beginning, who didn't understand what I was going through and would yell at me and give me detention, physically restrain me. And that just wasn't working for me. My school finally realized, okay, this isn't working. So they wrote out a 504 plan for me. And I'm so thankful that they chose Crystal Carter Sell as my third grade teacher, who is now one of my very best friends. Forever changed my life. Instead of yelling at me or lashing out at me, she would hold me, let me cry on her, hug her, spend so much extra time with me. And I'm just so thankful that to have her in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, to have mentors like that, to have people that we can lean on who see beyond the exterior into the interior is so valuable. Now, most of our listeners, Aiden, are foster adoptive parents, and many of our audience members, including ourselves, have witnessed the response to trauma that our children are displaying, but we don't know what it's like to be inside the brain of an adoptee. We don't know what it's like to walk in your shoes, and we're really passionate about highlighting the voices of adoptees because we believe that you're one of the most valuable resources that we as parents can press into to become better parents, right? So now you tell a story about what it was like to attend school and your reaction to the separation from your parents. And this is something we're familiar with firsthand, but what was that like for you?
I don't think words can describe what it was like. I think just the sheer amount of anxiety and the stress and the, just the crying and the emotional process, words just can't describe it. It's just so stressful for me. And at that point, I just needed someone to be there and say it was okay and not judge me and not yell back at me.
I really appreciated reading that story so much, just because as a parent going through that, at the time, I've been a parent for 20 years. So when my kids first started going to school, that was a long time ago. And it was such a helpless feeling because I think from my perspective, I thought, man, I loved preschool. I can imagine being at preschool today. I can close my eyes and go back to that and think that was one of the most fun parts of my 4 decades of life at this point. I can remember going back to kindergarten and how much I loved my teacher and I made friends and the classroom was lovely. And so when my kids were going through what you're describing, I felt helpless to even understand what was happening. I thought school is fun. Come on, let's get your school clothes on and let's go to school. Come on, let's get your backpack. And it wasn't for a while before I realized what was happening. And what was happening for our kids was that fear of separation. It wasn't until one of our children said, I noticed they were packing a toothbrush. And I said, kiddo, like, we don't need our toothbrush at school. We're not going to be there that long. And he said, whenever I have to go to a new home, I have to get a new toothbrush. And I hate that. So I just want to take it with me in case I don't come back. And so as I read your story from your perspective, I thought, oh, that's exactly what it was. And as a parent watching it, we just felt like, what do I do next? And it sounds like you have had the experience of having some adults not do the right thing, and some experience of having adults do the right thing. What are some ways that, or maybe I should back up a little and just say, what did that feel like to you when adults were not responding in a way that was compassionate or understanding? And then what did it feel like to have an adult connect with you the way that your teacher finally did?
Yeah, I think it makes you feel like, you don't matter, what you're doing is so wrong. No one is understanding me. What am I doing wrong? And why is somebody doing this to me? Versus, there's somebody who does understand. It's like, makes you feel like it's not your fault that you're going through something so hard, and you just need that one person to reach out and say, it's okay. And this, I think, applies to everything, not just, trauma and adoption, but this is anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had a therapist years ago who helped us work on changing some of the language that that our kids were telling themselves. And I think that feels a lot like what you were saying. Once we kind of got down to the heart of that matter with our children, we found that a lot of what they were telling themselves was, I'm a bad kid. I do the wrong thing. I make bad choices. I always do the wrong thing. I'm always going to be bad. And what that therapist really helped us to do was to shift the language in our own home. I know as a parent, I didn't realize that I should be changing that language. I thought, man, this is breaking my heart. So I would say something back like, of course, you're not a bad kid. You're a great kid. But the therapist actually had us all practice some of that together. I'm a good kid and I make good choices. And it seems so simple. It seems like a shift in narrative is too simple to be effective, but it was. And the more that we said it as parents and the more that our child said it, the more we actually noticed that was true. Our child would have a response to trauma. And instead of us saying like, cut it out, what in the world, what are you doing? If we said, oh, I know you're a good kid. Can you talk to me about what else is going on? Or it seems like you feel really afraid and that's okay. What can we do to help? All of a sudden, the dynamic shifted in our home.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you had a teacher that shifted that dynamic for you. In terms of how you felt at school, what were some of the things that she did that helped you to feel confident at school?
So I can remember a lot of big things. I always had a behavior chart and I never liked that. I always felt different and it wasn't helping me because it just like, it stood out to me in a way that I felt like everybody else was staring at me when I would go up and get that sticker, that meeting with the teacher. And, the teachers would constantly call me out. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that if a teacher is calling me out or really anybody in front of a large group of people, I'll have a panic attack. And one of the things that she did was she would pull me aside privately and say, hey, like, are you okay? What can I do to help you? Or this is wrong. This is how we can do better. And with my behavior chart with her, we didn't have like stickers. That wasn't my award. My rewards were, eating lunch with her in a different room or playing games with her at recess and really having that one-on-one connection that allowed me to get to know her better and allowed her to get to know me better.
Yeah.
And that just really helped grow our connection. That was one of the biggest things that helped me.
Yeah. When I was a freshman in high school, what you were saying right there just sparked this memory in me. I was a rule follower as a kid, so I did my best to not draw any kind of attention to myself. But as we all know this, it's hard. School is hard and there's bullying and there's people picking on you. And that's what happened to me. And I'll never forget that when one of my teachers discovered that's what was going on, that I was skipping lunch because I didn't want to be bullied in the lunchroom, she invited me to bring my lunch to her classroom. And that meant everything to me. Like that changed so much for me in that really crucial year, which was my freshman year. And I can imagine that was the same for you. What did that connection with your teacher, that moment that she, invited you, I agree with you. It's like behavior charts. Come on, that does so much damage. But the fact that she reversed that and said, you know what, it's going to be lunch with me. We're not going to do a sticker chart. We're going to do lunch with me. But what did that connection do? What did it mean to you? How did that transform you and change you?
Looking back, I can say it changed me for like the better. And it really allowed that connection. But in that moment, I'm thinking that it made me felt like the most important person in the world. It made me feel like I mattered.
Yeah.
And she really, really cared about me. And to this day, she still does. We talk regularly. We get together regularly. And that's just like something I'm so grateful for. But during that moment and when that was happening, it just made me feel like, she really cared about me.
You had so many good ideas as you were talking about that situation. Just that time in together and that connection and how that can really change. I know that there is often with parents our age and older, very much an idea of traditional parenting. So the way that Mike and I were raised, there is an expectation, and if you don't meet that expectation, there's a consequence. That's how I was raised. Seems okay. But then a lot of parents come into parenting a child who has experienced a lot of loss in the way that you have. And it's difficult to shift to something different. I know that a lot of teachers come from that traditional style of teaching. So here are the expectations in the classroom. And if you don't meet them, you miss recess, you lose a star, you clip down, whatever that is. What we know is that just doesn't work. And what we know, not only does traditional parenting not help children who have experienced trauma, but it's actually not something that humans really like at all. I can remember vividly being called out in school. For as much as Mike was a rule follower, I kept talking in class or talking back to the teacher or doing something I wasn't supposed to do. And my dad was a principal too. So Dad, if you're listening in, sorry about that. But I was so embarrassed. If I got called out in front of the class, I felt so embarrassed, and it did not have the desired effect for me. If a teacher embarrassed me, I didn't pull it together and suddenly have appropriate behavior. Now I just felt embarrassed and angry, and I further wanted to drill down on the back talk or whatever was happening at that moment. So I know that as humans, the advice that you're giving is actually really great advice. Who wouldn't want a teacher who just said every day, "You're a great kid. I can't wait to have lunch with you this afternoon. I want to be connected with you." I hope that all of our listeners have had that person in the past. I know that I have. I had a teacher in first grade that did a lot of what you're describing when my family was going through a big change. That teacher kept, I think back on it now and I realize she didn't say, "Kristen, you're going through something, and so I'm going to have you sit in with me at recess." She said, "Kristen, I got this new board game and I know you've been working so hard on spelling, and I thought you'd like to sit with me at recess today and do this board game." And when I look back on it, I realized she had identified that something was going on with me and I needed somebody to just sit with me. That was, that changed a lot for me too.
Yeah.
And I hope every listener has that person in their lives.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I rambled and I really did have a question with that. All right. So you talk about some of that insecurity and that feeling of loss, which we know is inherent to all adoptees. No matter what the story, every adoptee has lost their first family, period. So we know that plays a role in how our children are feeling about themselves and how they're viewing the rest of the world. How has that feeling of insecurity or that feeling of being unsure, how has that played out as you become a teenager and a young woman?
That's definitely something I think about every single day. It's just a part of me. I don't know any other way, so I don't wish that there was any other way, just because I'm so thankful to get where I am today, but it's definitely something that I think about every single day. And I think that amazing companies like 23andMe have sparked the ability to make new connections with people. And a couple years ago, I took a test and I was able to determine my ethnicity. And that was really just a bridge for me to realize that this is what I am, and now know 100% certain that I am Chinese, with a little bit of Vietnamese, because before that I had no idea. And when I got those test results, I actually cried because I was like, wow, I feel like I know who I am now. And despite it not showing up like immediate family, it just makes me feel like a piece of me that was missing is now here.
You're talking about something that we hear so many adult adoptees say, and that is that that need for connection and for identity, that to find that missing piece. And I really think that that identity can be both, and you can be adopted and love your adoptive family. You can be adopted and love your biological family, or want to know your biological family. You can be American and be Chinese. And I think that that's something that I hope, as I hear some of your confidence and your just your ability within your family to look for those things, to do the 23andMe. And I know that historically adoptees have not been supported in trying to find their history or their heritage. And I'm glad to hear that that you're able to make some of those connections and to feel connected to your heritage, to know where you come from, and to be able to find some of those missing pieces. I think that that's a really beautiful thing that I hope to hear, newer adoptive families, younger adoptive families begin to do, and begin to support their children in living in both worlds, and being able to have both feelings and emotions. As of today, you are 18 years old. You're in your senior year of high school. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh my goodness. So you went into your senior year of high school in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of one of the craziest years, at least in my lifetime. What are some successes that you are experiencing right now?
So I'm a dual enrollment student, meaning I'm taking college classes as well as high school classes. I only have like 2 high school classes as of now. And one thing that I've discovered through this pandemic is not having a teacher standing over my shoulder is just so much more beneficial to my style of learning, is to be able to work at my own pace, not be in a lecture for 45 minutes. Because me in class is like, I will not stop talking in class, and I will not stop getting distracted. And that's just my ADHD brain. And that's something that I've heard other people with ADHD say, is that they love being online because it's just so much more flexible. And that's just something that I've loved, is being online and being able to work at my own pace and find my own schedule, wake up at 1 p.m.
There you go. Yeah.
So it's really been beneficial. And I think it's been like a blessing disguised.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
That would be my style of schooling too. Like I never did well in school. My kids will ask me, they were asking me the other day, like, Dad, did you like school? And I'm like, not at all. They're like, did you like any part of school? Not at all. I did not like having to sit in the classroom all day long. Like if I could do what you guys are doing now, I actually may not get anything done because I'm such a free spirit like that. It would not bode well for me. But yeah, I think
a lot of us
like
have come face to face with some different parts of our personalities too during this time of doing things so differently. So I'm really glad that that's working out for you, and you're getting to have that flexibility with school. I know that for some of our kids, that's been awesome. For some, it's been not awesome. For us, we're used to traveling all the time. That's what we did for a job. And so we're at home all the time for 13 months now. It's great. A really long time to be here.
I think like no one thought it would go on this long, and it has. And I think it's just something that we've had to get used to at this point. And as sad as it is, I think a lot of people have learned to appreciate the flexibility of at-home learning and at-home working at home. And unfortunately, I'm really sad that my senior year is being taken away from me. My school has a lot of traditions. We have one of the biggest bonfires in high school and one of the largest high school rivalries for football. And the fact that that got taken away in November was really sad to me. And as for prom, that's still up in the air. And this is just so not how I imagined my senior year to go.
Yeah.
But I'm also so thankful to be able to have this style of learning and discover that I love being online. And I'm not even sure that I'm going to go back to college next year because this is working out for me so well. And because I'm getting the best grades that I've gotten in years.
Right.
A question I have for you, and this is something we always like to ask our guests on our podcast, because we interview medical professionals, therapeutic professionals. We interview fellow parents, adult adoptees, and our goal is to help parents become the best parents possible. Because a lot of us who are parents entered into the foster adoption journey, and we just were not prepared. Like nobody took the time to explain, like when, years ago when we started this, nobody took the time to say, listen, the child that you're caring for, has gone through trauma, and that can change the way that they interact with the world, the way that they see the world. So you need to know that and respond differently. I wish somebody would have told me that years ago when I first started this journey. And I've had to learn that. So our goal is to help parents, equip parents to the best of our ability. So what is some advice that you would have for parents who are seeking to adopt, parents who are, about to adopt or who have just adopted?
I think that one of the biggest misconceptions and one of the biggest fears is just trying to, the stigma that surrounds adoption, and the idea that it's going to be so hard and the fear that is associated with it. And I think my message to parents who are looking to adopt or foster is just go for it. Not only does it have the ability to save lives, it forever changes them. And it definitely did mine. And that's one of the things I always tell people is go for it. You don't know how it's going to be unless you try it. And it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me and my family. Not only, like I said, not only did it change my life, but it also forever changed my parents' life. And I'm just so grateful to have the family that I have today. And my parents feel the exact same way.
You are clearly already making an impact on the world. What does the future look like for you?
So I'm going for journalism, media, and professional writing at my local community college, which my mom works at. And in the future, I hope to go for music business and work for a record label in either A&R or digital marketing.
Wow. Really cool. That is really cool. Yeah. And you are just already making such an impact, as Kristen said, with everything that you're doing with social media through your platforms. Our listeners would love to connect with you if you'd love to connect with them. So could you share with us how they can find you, how we can find you on the World Wide Web?
So one of the biggest ways to find all of my links is going to be through my website, www.aidenlincoln.com. It's AYDENLINCOLN. And that's going to connect you to all of my social media sites as well as my other media publications and appearances.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that we have all of those for everybody listening. If you jump over to honestlyadoption.com/podcast, you can click on this interview, and all of those links will be included in the notes that accompany this episode.
All right. So we have two last questions for you. And we used to ask what our children have told us are lame questions. So they have different questions to ask you. We play in our house this nonstop game of Would You Rather. It started when one of our kids got a hold of a Would You Rather book about, he's 12 now. So we're like on 8 solid years of this game. He's 13. And so these are questions straight from my children to you. 1, would you rather spend the night in a luxury hotel room or camping surrounded by beautiful scenery?
Luxury hotel room. I'm definitely I like to spend more time indoors. I'm not extremely fond of bugs, especially mosquitoes. So definitely inside. That just sounds amazing, especially if it was surrounded like by a beach, then yes, count me in.
That sounds good. All right, here's your second question. Would you rather explore space or explore the ocean?
Space, definitely space. I think that there's so much out there that we don't know, and there's just so little people that have experienced that. And I'm actually a certified scuba diver. So,
Oh
wow.
my goodness.
Holy
That's
cow,
amazing.
that's awesome. Yeah, so you
Well,
get the best. So you've already gotten the best of the ocean, right?
So
or
now you
close
just
to
need
it.
to explore space.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Aiden, it has been delightful to get to know you a little bit more. I can't wait to see all the things that you are going to do in life. You are an exceptional young woman, and I appreciate you spending time with us today. Thank you so much.
thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I'm so grateful that you guys reached back out.